The cabin lights flickered as the turbulence worsened. Oxygen masks dangled, swaying like pendulums of panic above passengers' heads. The intercom crackled, then the captain's voice, steady but strained, cut through the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've lost our first officer. If there is any combat pilot on board, I need you in the cockpit now." Every head turned, scanning the rows. Some passengers gasped, others wept. Row 14, seat C, a woman who had been sleeping with a hoodie pulled over her head, stirred. She pushed the hood back, revealing sharp, calm eyes that didn't match the chaos around her. Slowly, she rose, steady, as if the storm meant nothing. The flight attendants froze, their training faltering under the pressure. The captain repeated the call, more urgent this time. And then every man, woman, and child on that plane watched as the unassuming woman walked forward. The silence was deafening as she paused at the cockpit door. Nobody knew that the stranger in row 14 wasn't just another passenger. She was Valkyrie. Her call sign alone had once made enemy pilots eject before the fight even began, but to understand how a legend ended up here, over civilian skies hidden in plain sight, we need to go back to the beginning. 2 weeks earlier, she arrived at Naval Air Station Oceana. The humid Virginia air carried the familiar tang of jet fuel and hydraulic fluid. Hornets roared on the runway, tailhooks glinting under the sun, while ground crews in cranials and float coats moved with mechanical precision. She stepped off the bus with a small duffel, no insignia, no wings pinned to her chest, just jeans, boots, and a weathered jacket with no identifying patches. To the watchstanders at the gate, she was nobody, just another civilian contractor reporting for paperwork. "Identification," the petty officer barked, his voice clipped. She handed over her card without flinching. He gave it a cursory glance, then waved her through, muttering under his breath about civilians cluttering up the base. Inside the admin office, the atmosphere was no warmer. A lieutenant commander, arms folded across his chest, eyed her up and down. He saw no ribbons, no rank, just a woman who looked more like a mechanic than a warfighter. "Listen, ma'am," he said, each syllable dripping with impatience. "This is a high-readiness squadron. We don't have time to babysit contractors. Stay out of restricted areas and don't get in the way of my pilots." She nodded once, professional, unbothered. Nobody knew that she had once logged more carrier landings than half his officers combined. Nobody knew that for the first time in 5 years, the Navy's most decorated female aviator was standing on their tarmac. She walked past rows of FA-18E Super Hornets, their wings folded like resting birds. Deck crews fueled and armed them for training sorties. She inhaled the familiar scent of JP-5 jet fuel. It was home, but she said nothing. She simply found her quarters, unpacked her single duffel, and blended into obscurity. The days that followed were a test of patience. She reported for routine contractor duties, logistics audits, simulator evaluations, safety inspections. Menial work, the kind pilots dismissed as beneath them. Yet she executed each task with precision, noting discrepancies in flight logs and safety checks that junior officers had overlooked. Whispers started. "Who is she?" a young ensign muttered in the ready room, watching her correct a checklist with calm authority. "Some desk jockey," another replied. "Probably never even touched a stick." But then came the first training exercise, a simulated dogfight aggressor squadron versus Oceana's best. She was there only to observe, clipboard in hand. The lieutenant commander, the same one who dismissed her, boasted loudly before the sortie. "Watch and learn, folks. This is how a real pilot handles bandits." They launched. 6 jets clawed into the sky. The ready room filled with radio chatter piped from the range. At first, the fight went as expected, clean turns, textbook tactics. But she frowned, scribbling notes. The commander was slow on his throttle management. His radar locks were sloppy. Worse, his wingman spacing was dangerous. Minutes later, the aggressor squadron splashed 3 of his jets in rapid succession. When he landed, sweat dripping under his cranial, she was waiting, calm, clinical. "Sir, your radar modes were out of sequence. You burned too much energy in the merge, and your wingman spacing left your 6 wide open. If that had been real, You'd be ejecting over the Atlantic." The room went silent. Nobody corrected a lieutenant commander. Not like that. His jaw clenched. "Stay in your lane, ma'am," he snapped. "You're here to shuffle papers, not critique pilots." But a few junior officers exchanged glances. They saw what he refused to admit. She had spotted every flaw in real time. Later in the simulator bay, a young aviator lingered. "Ma'am," he said hesitantly, "how'd you notice the throttle bleed so fast? I didn't even catch it watching the HUD replay." She almost smiled. "Because I've bled out faster than that in a real merge." The ensign froze, realizing she spoke from experience. But before he could press, she walked away. Rumors swirled. Maybe she was a retired test pilot. Maybe intel. Nobody knew the truth. The lieutenant commander grew irritated. Her presence unsettled his authority. Each day he looked for reasons to dismiss her, to prove she didn't belong. And each day she quietly dismantled his pride without trying. The tension was a storm waiting to break. It broke on a Tuesday morning. One of the squadron's Hornets, callsign Falcon 2, suffered catastrophic engine failure mid-flight. The pilot, a rookie with fewer than 200 carrier traps, fought to control the aircraft as alarms screamed in his cockpit. "Mayday, mayday, Falcon 2, engine fire, losing hydraulics, attempting emergency landing." His voice cracked with fear. The tower scrambled. Fire crews rolled onto the runway. The lieutenant commander grabbed the radio, barking instructions. But his orders were panicked, contradictory, telling the young pilot to both climb and descend, extend flaps, then retract them. She stood behind him, frozen for a moment, heart pounding. Then instinct took over. She shoved past, grabbed the secondary headset and keyed the mic. "Falcon 2, listen to my voice. Kill the left engine, pull circuit breaker 3 Alpha 4. You've got a fuel leak feeding the fire. Do it now." The pilot obeyed instantly. The fire warning light dimmed. "Good. Now switch to manual reversion. Your hydraulics are gone, so you're flying cable and rod. Keep it steady. You've got 3 miles to the deck." Her voice was calm, precise, like a metronome. The control tower went silent. Every SEAL in the courtyard below stopped their drills, looking skyward as the crippled Hornet limped in. She talked him down step by step. Airspeed, glide slope, flare timing. The jet screamed in on final approach, skidding across the runway in a shower of sparks. But it stayed intact. The pilot lived. The silence after touchdown was deafening. The lieutenant commander's face went pale when he realized she had done what he couldn't do, saved his pilot. The base gathered that evening. The rescued pilot stood trembling, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes wet with gratitude. The admiral himself arrived, drawn by the reports of what had happened. He approached her, studying her face. "Name," he demanded. She hesitated, then answered quietly, "Commander Alexandra Hayes, callsign Valkyrie, former CAG, carrier Air Wing 8. Gasps rippled through the courtyard. Every SEAL in the courtyard snapped to attention, saluting the legend they had dismissed as a contractor. The admiral's face went pale. He remembered the reports. Fallujah, Kandahar, Operation Inherent Resolve. She had downed 3 enemy fighters in one night. She had 2 distinguished flying crosses, a Silver Star, and more combat flight hours than any pilot in his command. Her call sign alone had once made enemies turn tail. The lieutenant commander swallowed hard, shame burning his face. "Ma'am, I didn't know." She met his eyes, steady but not unkind. That was the point. The admiral saluted sharply. "Welcome home, Valkyrie." She returned the salute, modest as ever. No gloating, no speech. Just the quiet dignity of a warrior who had nothing left to prove. And every man and woman on that base would never forget the day they discovered who she truly was.